Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of The Parting of Veils. It is a dreary day out today, and of course, obviously, I am decided to change locations a little bit for you for this episode. In today's episode, I will be reading you the story Hitchhikers. They Just Wanted to Go Home by Christine Soltis. It's from her anthology book, A Dark Kaleidoscope, which is filled with very, very creepy stories, and I hope you enjoy Hitchhikers. They wanted to go home. Melinda Garr gathered her purse and umbrella from the coat closet. Wrapping her jacket around her, she realized just how exhausted she felt. She had just completed a double shift at the mental institution she worked for, and it was not easy work. Just staying awake on a mandatory double was a hard task. Her drive home would take half an hour, but if she didn't get out of there soon, she just might go crazy herself. Bye, Mindy, her co-worker Heidi started as she headed for the door. Guess we'll see you tomorrow. Melinda's sleepy eyes glanced over the redhead's face. Oh, no, you won't. Tomorrow's my day off, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's just hope Mary doesn't call off again. I need the rest. I know, you look so tired. Are you sure you're okay to drive home? Heidi asked. You could always take a nap in one of the spare rooms before you drive. Oh, that's okay. This is all I need, Melinda said. She lifted a styrofoam cup and then poured more coffee into it. She glanced back at Heidi. Besides, if I stay here any longer, I'm going to become a patient. Heidi giggled. You're right. This place does make you feel that way. Melinda put the lid on her coffee and then rubbed her eyes. Heidi studied her one last time. Well, I'm just worried about you, so be safe getting home, she said. Hi, you're just worried that since we're understaffed, if I call off, then you'll be the one to have to do the double shifts, she joked. Heidi laughed. You're right, and I'm not 28 years old like you. I don't think I can handle them as well. Oh, you're only in your 30s. You aren't old yet, Melinda said. But I feel old. Just be safe. I have to go check on Mrs. Farley. She keeps saying, don't go into the storm. It's waiting for you. Sounds a little crazy to me, Heidi smirked. Creepy, Melinda agreed. On that note, I'm out of here. Following the bright white corridor, she looked out to the large windows. The night seemed so ominous, so threatening with the immense power of the wind and rain. Multicolored leaves blew around precariously as thunder rumbled from the sky. She definitely dreaded driving in this weather, but there was no other way to make it up to her bed. Past the sliding glass doors, she opened the metal door that led her outside. Underneath the safety of a platform, watching the storm, she pushed her umbrella up and out. It would not stay up. She tried again, waiting for the click to signify it would stay secure. Instead, it fell lazily back into place, as if she had not opened it at all. She looked ahead to her car. She had parked about 20 feet away from the building. She would be soaked by the time she reached in this downpour. She looked down at her white scrubs. Tomorrow she could do laundry, she thought. Without another moment's hesitation, she ran into the storm. Water had already filled potholes on the ground as she dodged each puddle, her feet leaping to the drier spots of pavement. As she moved closer to her car, her eagerness overwhelmed her, and she accidentally stepped into a puddle. She could feel the cold water soaking completely through her shoes and into her socks. Great, she muttered. She could not wait to get home under her blankets. The cold October rain was just enough to make her dread the coming winter. She only wondered why she didn't live somewhere warmer. In her car, she turned up the heat, defrosting the misty-lined windows, hoping to keep warm. Changing her CD in the player, she put her windshield wipers on and then looked behind her to back out. The mist still fogged her back window, and it was hard to see in the dark with the endless torrential rain. Thump! Her heart sped with surprise and shock. She hit the brakes suddenly, stopping the car with a jolt. Behind her, a blurry figure dressed in a light blue outfit beat repeatedly on the trunk of her car, scaring her. Thump, thump, thump. The pounding grew persistent. She could not make out who it was, but the behavior was beyond strange. Some part of her dared not step out of the car. She put her car in park, the back of her vehicle part of the way out of the spot. Thump, thump, thump. The pounding beat even faster. Now she heard a muffled voice yelling, but could not make out what they were saying. She reached for the pepper spray she kept in her car for emergencies. As she rolled down the window, she saw Heidi and another nurse run out from the front of the building towards her. She opened the door now and looked back. Behind the car, she saw that Mrs. Farley had been the one beating on her car. Now the patient leaned on the end of her car, covering her face. "Mrs. Farley, what are you doing out here? You are going to get sick," Melinda said. "Don't go into the storm," Mrs. Farley started. Her eyes were crazed, even more than usual. There was urgency in them, matched by the tone of her voice. Heidi and the other nurse, Melissa, grabbed Mrs. Farley, pulling her away. "No," she yelled as they dragged her away. "Don't go into the storm. It's waiting for you." "Mrs. Farley, you need your medication," Heidi said calmly. "Melinda, I'm so sorry. She got around us. We never expected her to try to come out. She never leaves her room. Are you okay?" Melinda's face was pale. She knew Mrs. Farley had gone crazy after her husband was killed, but she had never seen her do something so bold. She was one of the most submissive and innocuous of all the patients. Yeah, I'm fine," Melinda said. "We have to get her inside, out of the rain," Heidi said. "Be safe getting home." As they turned to leave, Mrs. Farley said, "My husband told me to tell you." Heidi and Melissa rolled her eyes, turning her fully around, taking her back into the institution. Melinda stood there for a moment, oblivious to the rain. She watched them take the woman away, and then got back into her car. She shook her head. Did some part of her really believe what this woman said? Why was she letting an institutionalized woman scare her? She backed out even slower this time, making sure Mrs. Farley hadn't gotten away again. As she left the parking lot, she paid close and careful attention to the road. Several leaves and small tree branches were scattered throughout the black asphalt, but she was unsure what danger she was supposed to worry about. What was Mrs. Farley talking about? Every day she drove these back roads to get home. She knew them so well. There was nothing here to fear. She was no longer in the mood for the CD she had put in, so she looked down to switch on the radio. Finding her favorite station, she looked up just in time to see a young woman dressed in a bright white dress directly in front of her car. She could not stop in time. Panic instantly burst through her. She was going to hit her. The girl was right in front of her. She hit her brakes, but it was too late. She hit the girl, stopping suddenly. But there wasn't a hit. There was no dreaded thumping noise that she had braced herself for. There was nothing. Melinda sat in her car. Her heart pounded with the speed of lightning. She just hit someone, but she didn't. Maybe she just didn't feel the impact. Maybe she really had hit her. "Okay, Melinda, calm down," she soothed herself. She stepped out of her car, moving slowly, dreadfully, to look at the front of it. There were no marks, no dents in her car. Even more importantly, there was no body lying in front of her car or even anywhere close. She looked around at the woods. The girl couldn't have gotten away in time. She couldn't have escaped so easily. It just wasn't possible. A chill went through her spine as she remembered the woods. The hairs on the back of her neck began to rise and goosebumps framed her arms. Mrs. Farley's words popped into her head. "It's waiting for you." Suddenly, even more frightened, she got back into her car, locking the doors behind her. "Melinda, it's okay. You just need some sleep. You're seeing things because Mrs. Farley scared you. Just get home," she said. She drove on, her eyes glued to the road ahead of her. She was cold and wet and delusional and exhausted. She looked down at her clock. It registered 11:34. It would be another 20 minutes before she got home. She looked up just in time to see the same woman standing in front of her car. This time, she stopped quickly, just inches from her. The woman disappeared. She vanished right in front of her eyes. Melinda rubbed her eyes. What was going on? Why was she seeing things? She rubbed her eyes again, and then looked ahead out to her window. There was nothing. She looked to the passenger side. She gasped. Staring in through the passenger side window was the young woman. She looked to be anywhere from 16 to 20 years of age. Her light blonde waves contrasted hauntingly with her dark brown eyes. She stood in the rain with only a white sundress and short sleeves. Melinda was scared, and the battle with her conscience began. She could not leave this girl in the rain, but should she? Was it just her eyes playing tricks on her, or had she seen this woman's image appear and disappear twice just now? With her control panel, she rolled the passenger side window down just an inch. "Hello, do you need a ride somewhere?" she asked, fingering the pepper spray at her side just in case she needed it. "I would like one," the young woman said. "I don't live very far from here." Her skin was so pale, her eyes so dark. She looked frighteningly undernourished. Hesitantly, Melinda undid the lock on the passenger side door. The young woman quickly, gracefully, slid into the seat next to her. "Hello, my name is Melinda," she said awkwardly. "What are you doing out in the rain? You're going to get sick." "Oh, I was just out for a walk," the girl said. There was a suspicious tone to her voice. Melinda worried about her decision as she put the car in drive. "Where do you live?" she asked. "A couple miles down here. I'll show you where to turn." "Okay," Melinda said. An eerie silence filled the space between them. "Your umbrella didn't work today," the girl said, "and you're all wet." Melinda's heart started pounding. She blinked quickly and swallowed hard. How did you know that?" she asked. "I've been waiting for you," the girl said. Melinda's heart beat faster. Was this what Mrs. Farley meant? Panic threatened her thoughts. She strained to find reason in this, struggling to find an escape. But a plan would not come to her overworked, adrenaline-rushed mind. Fear overpowered all rational thought. The girl continued on, confusing Melinda even more. "I needed a ride. I haven't been home in so long," the girl said. "Are you in trouble?" Melinda asked. "No, but I am wondering why you hit me earlier," she said, looking at Melinda. Melinda's heart felt like someone stepped on it, and it might explode out of her chest at any moment. Fear penetrated every nerve. She started. She looked over at the girl to find some way to explain, but she was gone. She slammed on the brakes. Oh my God, this is not happening," she said. "Get a grip on yourself." She turned on the interior light, looking around. The girl was nowhere to be found. Melinda tried to maintain control over herself as she drove on. Thoughts pounded at her head. "I'm hallucinating from sleep exhaustion. I just have to get home." But all of it seemed so real. She heard a noise in the backseat of her car. Before she could turn to look, there was a whisper in her ear. "Why did you hit me?" The voice was a delicate, quiet whisper, but it pierced into her ears. She slammed the brakes again, stopping and looking into the back seat. There was no one there. She started to cry. "What is happening to me?" she asked. Tears clouded her vision along with the rain ahead of her. She saw the white figure standing directly in front of her car again. She accelerated and kept going, hitting it, but not hitting at anything. The girl wasn't real. She couldn't be. Melinda's heart pounded. The tears ran faster. She caught a glimpse of white from the corner of her eye. She looked to her left. The woman's face was pressed against the glass, peering into her car as if she was holding on somehow, even in the rain. "Why did you hit me again?" she yelled through the glass. Melinda swerved with fear-filled shock. "Oh my God, you aren't real. She isn't real. She isn't real," she mumbled to herself. She drove even faster. "I have to get home. I have to get home. I have to get home," she tried to calm herself. Through her front window, suddenly, the woman stared directly into her face. Her body was attached to the car, but no, she was not holding on. "Leave me alone," Melinda screamed. The ghost girl pounded on the hood. "You should have stopped. Why did you hit me?" she yelled again. Melinda swerved the car to the right to try to fling her off. The girl didn't budge. "Why did you hit me? Why did you hit me? Why did you hit me?" she yelled. "I just wanted to go home." Melinda swerved again, but this time lost control of the car. It flipped over, rolling off the cliff on the right into the woods. Windows smashed, glass smearing throughout the car. Her head hit hard against the window and the seat of her car. Glass pieces cut into her body. She could feel the slices slashing at her. The car kept rolling, finally hitting a large tree and coming up to a stop, upside down. Blood dripped from her body as she felt weak, very weak. She couldn't keep her eyes open anymore. Finally, she gave in to sleep. The ambulance horns blared with a fury. The rain had stopped as the policeman climbed down the wet hill. "Be careful, guys," Officer Mark Jones started. "This hill is very slippery." Minutes later, they reached the wrecked vehicle. A young woman was in the driver's seat. She was hanging upside down, her seatbelt still attached. Blood covered parts of her arms and face. Jonas reached into the vehicle, taking her wrist to check her pulse. He looked at the other officers and frowned. "She's gone," he said. "Call the coroner." The next day, only a few feet away, they found a broken body of a young woman identified as Georgianne Marie Brown. She had been reported missing months ago by her family. An autopsy of the woman's body showed she had broken bones in every part of her body. It was later revealed that she had been hit by a car and then dumped into the woods. Less than a week later, Michael Andros admitted he hit the girl one rainy night. He was scared, so he threw her body into the woods. His guilt caught up to him after he saw the reports on the news. Apparently, the young girl had had a fight with her mother and went for a short walk in the rain to cool down. She was on her way back home when she was killed. They say a ghost will roam within its area of death if their end was not settled. Apparently, ghosts will do whatever they can do to settle their fluctuating spirit, even if it means sacrificing another person's life, even if it wasn't the guilty one. However, we can't help but wonder about the other soul. What exactly is it that will settle the spirit of the innocent who was sacrificed? How do they find their way home when the one who sent them there was already gone? 1 year later, Manny Edwards had just worked a double shift at the mental institution. He was tired and weary. He blasted music to keep himself awake as he drove. Then he noticed a woman stood on the side of the road. She was wearing scrubs, just like his, with a jacket over top. She didn't look familiar to him, but he was relatively new to his job. She looked like she needed a ride home, though, he thought. He pulled off the side of the road ahead of her, moving his CD case off the passenger seat and turning his music down. The woman approached his car, staring into his passenger side window. She was a ghastly, eerie presence. Still, he rolled down the window. "Hey, do you need a ride?" he asked. "You'll catch a cold out there." She smiled and said, "I'd love a ride. I've wanted to go home for a very long time now." And thus the circle begins. Well, that was Hitchhikers. They Just Wanted to Go Home, written by Christine Soltis, A Dark Kaleidoscope. You can pick up the book at Amazon as well as some other book retailers online. I will link below. And I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did enjoy it, like, share, subscribe. There is a lot more to come. So I will see you all next week for episode 7, and I will see you all on the other side.